Yeah. So where were we?
Well,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
kind of interrupted and distracted you because you were just talking about the fact that you actually think that the recovery movement, or that it's not very helpful if people collectively, it's not very helpful. It might be helpful to them, but we don't want really very narrow, restrictive definitions of recovery. You were talking about it being slightly more encompassing, I think. Yes.
I think that's important, and it's something that's very much misunderstood or kind of glibly judged. I mean, when Phil Valentine, I think it was, said, you're in recovery if you say you are. That's a very profound statement, and a lot of people criticize that as being ridiculously laissez-faire, and does that mean that somebody who's absolutely pissed out of their head and shooting up smack can say, well, I'm in recovery, and they are. But that's not what he means. He means that that it's a very personal, individual, quality to be in recovery. Is you shape it yourself. The things that are important to you get integrated into your recovery. Now that generally involves linking with other people and being, that sociality of recovery is inescapable. But that you're in recovery if you say you are means that people who are, let's say, on opioid substitution treatment and using that correctly, and they're not using anything else, and their lives are in order, and they're taking their kids to school and so on, have absolutely the right to say I'm in recovery, just as much as someone who has decided that abstinence is the key to their recovery. So that and there are lots of other things, the shape of women's recovery compared to men's recovery, the shape of recovery in ethnic minorities, which is another interesting area because I think they're very underserved. And the recognition of people's needs based on their ethnic and religious and other affiliations needs to be taken into account when thinking about recovery. And there's also there's that slight danger there of the what you call colour blindness, which is where, being part of the dominant society, you just assume that you're welcoming everybody, and you're not racist, and you don't care if this person's black or brown or what. But actually, that doesn't do it. That doesn't actually produce the conditions which are required for people from different groups to actually find a safe, secure, congruent, meaningful recovery. And I think that's something that's in development now. I think Sohan Sahota, with his BAC-IN charity from Nottingham, that's kind of specifically wanting to look at the needs of people from ethnic minorities in recovery. So important.
And I'm struck in that sense of what you say about that diversity of needs in all sorts of space, that when I think of the activities that I see people do in that recovery sociality, and they're often activities which people might do in stronger family networks if they were accessing them. But and we can take all of those. They can be arts based, they can be music based, they can be sports based, they can be outdoor or green therapy based. They can be kind of boxing, martial artsy type spaces. There can be we know dance recovery organised. There's a real diversity there as well that speaks to different people having different needs in exactly the same way that the whole of society, we don't all just fill our hole, to come back to your expression. Each of us doesn't fill our hole all with the same thing. We all do it with different things anyway,
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think you've hit on something really important, because actually, although that diversity is really wonderful, it also makes for a vagueness about defining. There's this idea that lived experience, which some people find clumsy expression, but the people with lived experience of addiction and recovery are organising these kind of activities that you've just described, and they're doing it in different ways. And actually, because they are so various, it's difficult to kind of define it and then give it some sort of institutional status. I mean, we could discuss whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but when you think, what does a lived experience recovery organisation do, you can't answer it, because it could do any of the things you've just said and many, many others. It can provide, for example, links to formal education. It can provide work opportunities and other things. So it's such a wide range of stuff, and which is good. I mean, it's interesting that you're talking about different strokes for different folks. I mean, it was revealed in the COVID inquiry this morning that not a single member of the cabinet had ever been to a football match in their entire life, which is, probably one of the most damning things that's been said in the inquiry.
Well, but also explains why, therefore, they have no consideration of what it's necessarily doing to people when they lock that whole thing down for
yeah. Well, I mean, clearly it was a demonstration of mass incompetence. But my point being is your point, which is that people don't all share the same interests, they don't all share the same cultural meanings, and so on.